Greetings, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. In 2017, the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres committed the organization to stamp out sexual exploitation and abuse, also known as PSEA. 5 years on, the annual update on the organization's effort to prevent and respond to PSEA recognizes that while first steps have been taken, challenges persist and a lot remains to be done. The Secretary General said, and I quote, "5 years ago, I committed to a strategy to change the game when it came to combating sexual exploitation and abuse. I acknowledge that the organization has not succeeded in all respects, but neither have we stood still. We must persevere in our efforts to address these wrongs that exist in every society at every level." End of quote. The United Nations Standards of Conduct on Protection and from Sexual Exploitation and Abuse, PSEA, applies to everyone. We must take a system-wide approach to implement them and always put victims first. The United Nations in China is committed to working with our partners to do just this. We will establish protocols, better practices, making zero tolerance a reality, and learn from past experiences to improve our efforts. We must remember that this is a joint responsibility for us all, and these targets cannot be achieved without ongoing collaboration and coordination. We must equip all United Nations personnel and United Nations partners with awareness and knowledge to prevent, to respond, and to support victims. Since 2020, the United Nations in China has taken a number of concrete steps towards achieving these goals. Each year, the United Nations country team in China endorses an annual action plan on measures to prevent and respond to PSEA. In 2021, the United Nations country team came together to sign a code of conduct in line with the management and accountability framework of the United Nations Development System to commit to ensuring respect for gender equality and supporting PSEA efforts. At the same time, the United Nations in China also established a PSEA task force chaired by UN Women and the United Nations Population Fund and supported by a PSEA network, including focal points from each of the United Nations entities. The PSEA task force leads the implementation of our annual action plans and provides technical support to the United Nations in China on PSEA. Earlier this month, our PSEA task force conducted a PSEA training for all United Nations personnel in China. The informative and vivid training sessions enabled our colleagues to better understand how to recognize, prevent, and respond to PSEA. In addition to working with the United Nations personnel on preventing and responding to PSEA following the United Nations protocols on allegations of sexual exploitation and abuse issued on the 21st of March 2018, the United Nations also recognizes the importance of working with implementing partners to ensure adequate safeguards and appropriate action related to protection from PSEA. Our partners in China are instrumental in the implementation of the United Nations Sustainable Development Cooperation Framework and the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. The United Nations in China looks forward to working together with our partners to ensure that PSEA guidelines and measures are applied throughout our work, ensuring protection and support for the beneficiaries while enhancing our impact. Through today's online training, I hope all implementing partners will gain more awareness, knowledge, and resources to help guide us on our PSEA efforts. I remain committed to taking an active role in these efforts, in circulating the Code of Conduct on PSEA and offering my fullest support to the implementation and monitoring of the country-level PSEA strategy with all partners in China. I also want to thank UN Women and UNFPA for their leadership in chairing this task force, and to UN Women and the United Nations Children Fund, UNICEF, for arranging this critical training for all implementing partners of the United Nations in China. The United Nations in China must be a model of best practice on PSEA, but this will not happen overnight. We must all work together and persist if we are to make this a reality. I wish you all a very productive training and discussions today. Thank you. Xie xie.